So today we're going to be finishing my workbook on the first 6 chapters of Daniel. And we're on my last chapter, which will be Daniel in the Lion's Den. But there was quite a bit of time between Daniel 5 and Daniel 6. So we want to do a quick look at the change of kings as soon as I get to it. Right here. So Daniel 6, which we'll be reading today, it talks about, am I at the wrong place?
Yeah.
Yes, I am. I am at the wrong place. Right here.
This one has the map.
Right there. It talks about Darius and King Darius, and yet that's a problem with history. So I kind of wanted to explain a little bit of who Darius is. King Darius of Daniel 6 presents a problem as he doesn't seem to exist in Persian historical documents. So let's break it down. What do we know from the book of Daniel about Darius? He took over the kingdom from the last Persian king, Belshazzar, when he was 62 years of age. He's the son of Xerxes, not of the book of Esther, and Amid. That's odd. Okay. 3, he is definitely not the later King Darius the Great, who rules after Cyrus, as Daniel is not alive and Darius the Mede was 62 when he took over Babylon kingdom in Daniel 5:31. So who is Darius the Mede and why is he called the king of Babylon? The best conclusion is that Darius the Mede was governor over Babylon installed by Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great was the king of the entire Persian Empire. Biblical evidence that supports this is as follows. Daniel 5:30, Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. Daniel 6:28, so Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Daniel 9:1, in the first year of Darius, son of Xerxes, who was made ruler over the Babylon kingdom. So basically, even though it says Darius the king, he is not really the king, but more governor of this area.
Now, is this the Darius that I might have stories mixed up, but is this the Darius that sent the the Israelites back?
Well, Cyrus is the one that makes the first thing, and then there are Darius's the kings, but they're way ahead of this. Daniel will be dead by the time those exist. So that's why we say that this Darius is more of a lieutenant or maybe a governor of the area and these things. So.
All right. That makes sense.
Okay. So Daniel in the Lion's Den.
All right. Daniel 6:1. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. The satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss.
So when was this during the reign of Darius the Mede? Was it the first year? More than likely, because Daniel is in his 80s and will only live for the first 3 to 4 years of Darius's reign. So we do think it's near the very first part of his time here, because Daniel's so old. Where did Darius the Mede do during the first year of his rule of Babylon?
He appoints 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom.
Another word for satraps is princes. How many administrators were over all these satraps?
3.
Okay. What was Daniel?
He was a administrator.
Right. If there were 3 administrators, how many satraps could be under each one?
There would be 40 under each one because you're going to divide the 120 total by 3.
Right. This is typical nay. I'm a math person. Why were the satraps accountable to the administrators?
So the king wouldn't suffer loss.
Right. And what does it mean that the king might not suffer loss?
I feel that it's a suffer loss of money. He wouldn't lose money. He wouldn't lose imports and exports.
Yeah. I mean, if there are more people in control, then he doesn't have to control everything too. So, these things.
Daniel 6:3. Now Daniel is distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. At this, the administrators and satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent.
Right. So of course, Daniel's a Jew. And the other administrators and satraps weren't Jews. And
Mhm.
so they're trying to find a way to diminish his power, his because the king seemed to really prefer him. But they couldn't find any corruption in him. And I think, you have to have this happen, you have to have a situation where not only have you not done anything wrong, but your life is so above reproach they can't find anything wrong. Like,
Okay.
for instance, an example of this in my mind is when Vice President Pence won't even go on a lunch date with a female unless his wife's there. You know,
Yeah.
there is not even a chance or a hint of something that could go wrong. I laughed when they tried to. Well, that's political. We don't have to go there. Okay, so why did the king plan to set Daniel over the whole kingdom?
Because of his exceptional qualities.
Right. What did the other administrators and satraps do because the king was going to favor Daniel?
They wanted to try to find a ground for charges against him.
Why couldn't the other administrators and satraps find grounds to file charges against Daniel?
They couldn't because Daniel was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent.
And this is what we often find is if you are doing exceptional work, high work, somehow Satan's going to try to take you down. Like in your case,
Exactly.
where you work so hard with the church and stuff, and so he's trying to take you down, which he won't succeed because your ministry is still who you are, not
Mhm.
what you were doing.
Exactly.
Um, why do you think the other administrators and satraps wanted to do this? Sorry about that. I always do that.
Because I think it's because they're jealous.
Right.
They're jealous of his position. They're jealous about how he is viewed by the king. So it's just jealousy. It boils down to jealousy.
Right. Yeah, this is quite a huge testimony for an 80-year-old Jewish man in a foreign kingdom.
Mhm. Daniel 6:5. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of his God." So these administrators and satraps went as a group to the king and said, "May King Darius live forever." The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den.
So they're playing to King Darius's ego. And they often do this with the Persian kings. They played to Xerxes' ego when he makes this ruling against all the Jewish people. They play to their egos, and these kings are often set apart from the real world, so they really don't know what's going on. So, what did the other administrators and satraps feel was Daniel's weakness?
God. They
God.
felt that God was his weakness, and that if they could use that against him, then they could turn the king's eye.
Right. There is a lie these administrators and satraps say in verse 7. Can you see what it is?
That the royal administrators have all agreed, because they haven't, because Daniel doesn't know nothing about it.
Right. Very good. Very good. What did these administrators and satraps want King Darius to do?
They wanted him to issue an edict and enforce the decree that no one, for 30 days, no one could pray to any god or anything, basically, except for the king.
Right. How long was this decree to be?
30 days.
What was the penalty if someone did not obey the decree?
They were going to be thrown in the lion's den.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's see, Daniel 6:8. Now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repelled. So King Darius put the decree in writing.
Both here and in the book of Esther, we have a decree that is written that cannot be repealed even by the king. This was the law of the Medes and Persians. The belief was that the king spoke for the gods, and the gods can never be wrong. Therefore, no decree written was written in error. In both cases, it is what causes the problems the stories are about. If this decree is put into writing, can it be repealed?
No,
What if the king wants to repeal it? Can he?
no, he can't.
Why do you think King Darius would agree to write this decree?
He believed that he was above God, and this was going to elevate him.
That could be, yeah. He doesn't certainly believe any person is greater than him. So, yeah. How do you think this will be a problem for Daniel?
I think it's going to be a problem because Daniel is a faithful servant of God.
Mhm. Right. What is another book in the Bible that also happens during the time of the Persian Empire and also has a problem with the decree written by a king?
Esther.
Yeah. Why could no decree be repealed even by the king according to the Medes and Persians?
Once it's in writing, it is believed that the king spoke for the gods and they could never be wrong. Daniel 6:10. Now, when Daniel learned about the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before.
Did Daniel know about the decree?
Yes, he did.
Did he change his routine after hearing about the decree?
No,
He neither minimized his prayer time, like just for these 30 days, nor increased it in defiance. He did exactly what he was always to do. What were his windows open toward?
Jerusalem.
Yeah, and basically that's what they tended to do is pray towards the temple. You have that phrase in Jonah where he's in the belly of the big fish and he says, I shall pray towards the temple. It's like, how do you know where the temple is, Jonah? But they have this sense of praying towards the temple, towards
Yes.
Jerusalem. Based on the scripture below in First Kings, who started the praying towards the temple in Jerusalem? Go ahead
King
and read it.
Solomon.
Yeah.
King Solomon.
Mhm. May your eyes be open toward this temple night and day, this place of which you said, my name shall be there, so that you will hear the prayer your servant prays towards this place. How often did Daniel pray?
3 times a day.
Although there was not a rule given by God on this, it corresponded to the times of sacrifice in the temple when people prayed. Incidentally, you know, we pray 3 times a day for our meal.
Yes.
So we kind of translate it to something we could remember all the time. Although there was no, okay, what kind of prayers did Daniel pray? Praise, petition, or thanksgiving?
It was for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Daniel is a Jewish man who spent his whole life in a foreign country. Why does he have to be what does he have to be thankful for?
He's thankful because he has God, and that God is with him through the difficult times.
Yeah. Exactly.
Daniel 6:11. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or human being except you, your majesty, would be thrown in the lion's den? The king answered, the decree stands in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. Then they said to the king, Daniel, who was one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to your majesty or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day. When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him.
Right. He couldn't change the decree. He couldn't figure out any other way to do it.
Daniel 6:15. Then the men went as a group to King Darius and said to him, "Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed." So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, who you serve continually, rescue you."
Right. So from the prior page, what did these administrators and satraps discover about Daniel?
That he was still praying 3 times a day.
Yeah. Was the king happy or upset that Daniel was found disobeying the decree?
He was upset and distressed.
What did the king do up to sundown when Daniel was to be thrown into the lion's den?
He tried his hardest to find a way to save Daniel.
Right. Could the king change the decree to save Daniel?
No.
Did the king finally give the order to throw Daniel in the lion's den?
Yes.
What did the king say to Daniel as he was being thrown in?
May your God, whom you serve, continually rescue you.
How often does Daniel serve God? On Sabbath days only or continually?
Continually.
Yeah.
6:17, a stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep.
What 3 things were done to the mouth of the lion's den?
A stone was placed over it. The king sealed it with his signet ring and then sealed it with the signet rings of the nobles.
This can be looked at in a few ways. First, that no one could rescue Daniel, nor that he could escape on his own. However, it also protected him against his enemies who may want to make sure he was dead in some way. What 3 things let us know the king was very upset?
He would not eat, he didn't want entertainment, and he couldn't sleep that night.
Right. Do you think Daniel prayed when he was in the lion's den?
Oh, yes.
This is similar to many of the situations we get into. A person with evil intentions does not like the blessings we receive due to our faith in Christ, so they cause trouble for us. Like Daniel, it can look like all is lost, but then there is God. Sometimes the impossible that he does so that only he gets the glory.
Daniel 6:19, at the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?"
How soon did the king come down to check on Daniel?
As soon as it started to get daylight.
Yeah, and what title does the king give Daniel?
Servant of the living God.
What does the king ask?
Has his God rescued him?
Right. Both King Darius and King Nebuchadnezzar had experiences that point to the God of the Hebrews being the one and only God. Let's see how each responds. So this is a comparison of the two. King Nebuchadnezzar, what does he say about God in Daniel 3:29 after Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego survived the blazing furnace?
That no one will say anything against their God, or they will be cut into pieces.
Right. And what does he call God in Daniel 4:2 when he's about to tell what's happened to him?
Most High God.
Right. Now, King Darius, what does he say to Daniel in Daniel 6:16?
May your God rescue you.
And what does he hope in Daniel 6:20?
That Daniel's God did rescue him.
Which one of these 2 kings had the stronger faith in the God of the Jews?
Nebuchadnezzar, and the reason was because he seen God's work and he learned from it. So he eventually turned to the Jewish God.
Right. Well, it could be. Yeah, we don't know really, but it's a neat comparison.
Daniel 6:21. Daniel arrived. No. May the king live forever. May God send his angel, and he shut the mouth of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I have found innocent. Was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty.
Why did Daniel say he survived being in the lion's den?
That God sent his angel and he shut the mouths of the lions.
Why did God save Daniel according to Daniel?
That he was he was innocent in his sight,
Right.
that he was innocent in his sight, and that, he had never done wrong to the majesty.
Right. Did Daniel do anything wrong against the king in any way?
No,
No. Did Daniel hold a grudge against the king for what happened?
no.
Let's consider the strength of character of Daniel. What does Daniel 6:4 say about Daniel?
He is not corrupt nor negligent.
Even though he knew about the decree, what does Daniel continue to do in Daniel 6:10?
Pray.
And how does Daniel 6:22 say God found him?
Innocent.
So Hebrews 11:32-34 regarding the heroes of faith. What more can I say? I do not have time to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah. But David and Samuel and the prophets, whom through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned into strength.
Daniel 6:23. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones.
Was there any wound found on Daniel at all?
No.
How did the king feel about Daniel surviving?
Overjoyed.
What was the conclusion as to why Daniel was saved?
He trusted God.
Right. After Daniel was brought up from the lion's den, what did the king do?
He had them and their families that accused Daniel thrown into the lion's den.
Right. How many satraps and administrators were there?
120 satraps and 2 administrators.
Quite a lot. Who else was thrown into the lion's den?
Their wives and children.
Yeah, as I tell my students, the Bible's not a G-rated book. How fast were they destroyed by the lions?
Before they even touched the floor.
Right. This definitely proves that God's intervention that saved Daniel. Besides that, the lions would have been very, very hungry at that point.
Oh, yeah. Daniel 6:25. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and prophets of every language and all the earth. May you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and revere the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions.
King Darius issues a decree that can never be repealed according to the law of the Medes and Persians about the God of Daniel. What does he decree?
That he must be feared and revered.
Right. Aside from saving Daniel, what does King Darius say about the God of Daniel?
That he is the living God and endures forever. His dominion will never end. His kingdom will not be destroyed. He rescues and saves. And then also, he performs signs and wonders.
Yeah.
Daniel 6:28. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian.
Right. So technically we're at the end of this book, but I wanted to take a quick look at here. So we see that Daniel will probably make it a little into Cyrus's life before he dies. And he might have seen, according to the Bible scholars, he might have seen the start of the temple being built before he dies. So he has lived literally through the taking over from Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, of Judah, clear to the start of the Israel being rebuilt. That's pretty cool. All right, so that's the end of this, and I will see you next. Let me